All right. And we are live on episode 60 of the PHU Dynasty podcast, coming to you live with a new combine review, free agency matchmaker. We're going to redo the rookie draft from 2021. Um, Plenty of stuff to talk about today, Sean. Are you ready to go for this? And we need hot takes. We're here for the hot takes.
They manifest organically, so I mean, we might see some as we go, but I can't promise anything.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's better as a surprise, I think, anyway. So we can't. I joked about doing the hot take episode, but it's better when it is organic. That's for sure. All right, so we have quite a bit to get to. So we're going to start right off at the top with the combine review. Sean, this was a crazy combine. This was one of the craziest combines I can remember. We might be lagging a little bit. Did you hear me there?
You broke up, so
Dang. Yeah, I'm seeing that I got some crappy connection right now, so we might have to deal with it for now. So I was saying that this combine is probably one of the most crazy combines in recent memory. Some of the fastest times we've seen from all different shapes and sizes. I mean, it was truly insane. So I want to start right off at the top, obviously, with probably the biggest talk. We'll talk, Xavier Worthy running a 4.21. I would say most regarded him as kind of like a early second kind of guy heading into the combine. I don't think he's making it out of the first round now based on that number. I mean, the teams in the NFL just can't get enough of these guys that just run super fast. They always seem to go high. Are you thinking the same thing at this point?
I do. I'm worried about that though, because I
The track record's terrible.
I don't like him at all. I don't like either of the Texas receivers. So
they're definitely projections.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I think I would take AD over him, but you look at the top 40 times of all time and tell me what guy actually stuck in the league.
I mean, you can go down the list offensively and defensively, and most of the guys that were going under 4.32 or whatever, they're all busts. Every single one of them. It's not a good thing, generally speaking, for fantasy purposes.
Especially if you're using the weight adjusted 40 times,
that changes everything.
Yeah, it's not. He's not really special, to be honest.
Because he's. If he's 165 pounds, to put in a comparison, Devonta Smith was 6 foot 170, and he's 5'11", 165. So it's realistically kind of not that different in body size.
He's in Tutu Atwell range, small was.
I don't know. He was 149 pounds, dude.
Yeah, but
that's crazy. It's absurd to play in the NFL at 149 pounds is just insane. But yeah, 165. And what's crazy too is he does not really have that frame to get bigger either. It you just look at him and be like, I think that might be it. So, I mean, you
mentioned Devonta Smith before. He is such an outlier. He's been special.
He was always that guy. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's hard to compare somebody to him, even just metrics wise, because he just plays so much bigger than he is, and he holds up, which is crazy.
He always reminded me of Joe Horn. He had that skinny build, but just still made it happen, and was always pretty explosive. But I mean, Worthy tests at 100% combine, 100% percentile at least, because he was the fastest. And then his burst score was a 96 percentile. Breakout age is 97th percentile. College target share is 89th percentile. He's pretty much checked every box in terms of production and metrics. It's just when you look at him though, it's I don't know about this guy. It's just it doesn't.
You just don't know how many games a year he's gonna be able to play. I mean, you look at Tank Dell last year. Tank Dell was really good, but literally the moment he steps inside the hash marks, did he break his leg?
I think so. Yeah, it wasn't good.
Offensive play. Why would you even put him in a running play in the red zone? But that's a different story.
Another thing going against him too is his hands aren't very good, which leads me to believe that this is a Kansas City Chief. He's a fast guy who drops passes and is super fast. He sounds like it could be a Chief to me. So I don't know. So if we want to talk about weight adjusted 40-yard dashes, I mean, I think this is more impressive than Xavier Worthy running 4.21 is Brian Thomas running a 4.33. I mean, that guy, he looked very legit. He looked like you just saw him when he was running out there. It's like, dang, this guy looks nice.
Dude, I'll tell you right now, he's closer to the top 3 than he is the next person down from him to me. I think he's clearly the wide receiver 4.
Yeah, I think he's in his own tier at this point. I mean, I don't really. I mean, I think some people we could actually even let's loop in AD Mitchell in this conversation. Just I mean, from a height, weight, speed adjusted type look, not production wise. Like both of these guys are kind of on the same um, wavelength in terms of like size and the type of the receiver they are. But I don't think AD is really close to Brian Thomas right now. I mean, I think landing spot might change that, but um, production wise, it's really not close either. I mean, Brian Thomas was a stud this year, had 17 touchdowns, and you just didn't see that from AD Mitchell. But I mean, you're talking about Brian Thomas Jr. with a 98th percentile run at 4.33 at 6'3", 209. I mean, that's just insane. 99th percentile speed score, 83rd percentile in burst score. I mean, he was phenomenal this year for Jaden Daniels. I have a hard time believing he's going to slip out of the top 15 at this point.
He's a little bit lighter, but like it's like almost like DK Metcalf like level of like freakiness. Not
See, I felt that kind of way about Xavier Legette at times. Like when you watch him, he's got that beefy build, but he's not as tall as DK. So
yeah, everybody wants to. He's the one that keeps getting compared to Tebow, right?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, he's 6'1", 229. He's got that like running back build, but he's so beefy that it's like he kind of does things like when you watch him, the first thing I think of is kind of like a DK Metcalf. Like he's not really all that impressive in terms of route running or just like the way he goes about the game, but he's got something to him that you can see and grasp on. So but Brian Thomas, I mean, you watch him play, you know, Neighbors obviously is Neighbors, but you know, there's nothing to scoff at this year. I mean, he put out really good tape. He's a little more raw, obviously, but I mean, do you think he gets out of the top 20 in the NFL draft? I have a hard time believing you run that fast, have that great of a production profile in your last year, early breakout age. It doesn't. I can't see it happening. I just like it's.
I'd have to look at the draft board because I'm pretty sure like I've done like a couple of like just mocks just for the fun of it, and I'm trying to remember.
I'm gonna pull up Charlie's big board. He just released it today, and I'd love to see where he has a few of these guys, specifically Brian Thomas. I think he was a little bit lower on some of the other receivers than the consensus.
Jacksonville would be a great fit.
I think it's a great fit too. That would be awesome.
That's 17. So,
but that would be a logical spot.
It's wide receiver offensive line for them, more than likely. So,
yeah, you would think at least. I mean, they need the help there. He's got Brian Thomas at 19. So, I mean, that kind of adds up. He says, listen to this blurb. In terms of side speed, athleticism, and upside, Thomas is probably second to only Marvin Harrison Jr. in this year's draft class.
Interesting.
So, I mean, he definitely likes him, but I think he has a Dunze obviously ahead. Yeah, so he's the wide receiver 4 for him as well, which is pretty standard for most people. So
I feel pretty comfortable with it going Harrison, Neighbors, Adunze, Thomas in that order in the draft.
Yeah, I would, if I had to bet on that, would be what I would bet on as well. I mean, I think the only one that might sneak up would be like the next guy, AD Mitchell, maybe if somebody just fell in love with them, or Worthy just for the speed. I mean, I don't. Yeah, I wouldn't do it, but it would be crazy if somebody else did. I mean, shit happens every year.
Not a big Lad McConkey guy.
Dude, he ran fast as hell too. We can talk. Let's talk a Lad. Let's talk some Lad 4.39. Let's talk him.
I didn't even see these.
I'm telling you, I'm trying to tell you, Lad McConkey. He's not just a Hunter Renfrow out here. This guy's running speed. I'm gonna find out Hunter Renfro's numbers real quick, just because like he always gets. That's like the obvious comparison, just because he's a little white guy. Mm-hmm. So it's like, oh, let's see what the difference is. God dang, there's a huge plane going over our heads right now.
I can't remember who I was listening to, but he had like a Lad had like a huge like physical comparison and like speed scores. Like a lot of his like numbers came out very similar to Emmanuel Sanders.
That's actually a good little comp too, because he plays that same type of receiver role too.
Mm-hmm.
So Renfro ran a 4.59, like terrible metrics, like some of the worst metrics you could think of actually. And at 5'10",
He's not fast. He's
184.
quick. He's not fast.
Right. But then Lad, I think is almost the exact same size. 5'11", 6 foot 186. So he's a little taller, but 94th percentile for his 40-yard dash. Here's the problem with Lad. He's never produced. I mean, he's always been in a stacked offense, so that's always against him. But his best year was 2022. He had 762 yards. I mean, it wasn't great, but once again, that offense was pretty much loaded top to bottom with talent. So it's probably tougher for him to get involved. But he played great at the Senior Bowl. I mean, where do you think he lands at this point? I feel like early second round makes sense.
I like him better than both the Texas guys, so I think I would have him at like the end of the first. But like I think he end of the first, early second.
I think that's fair to say. I mean, I think with everybody after Thomas, you can kind of go whatever route you think fits best for your team or like all that kind of thing. I mean, I think for dynasty purposes, the draft capital is going to mean so much, and what team they land on, of course. Like if you said like Brian Thomas goes to Jacksonville, it's going to be a pretty good landing spot for him.
That's a rocket ship.
But like, what if Vlad goes to like the Panthers? Like, I don't feel great about that. I mean, he could flourish with a short passing game like that, but it's tough. It's tough. That's a tough one for me to wrap my head around. Let's go over to Devontae Walker running a 4.36. This is another guy like pretty sizable. And this is like what we were talking about. I don't know if we mentioned this on the last podcast, but this draft is so different than last draft for wide receivers with like the size.
Yeah.
And the speed too. Like if you look at last year's draft, like, I mean, I'm looking down this list. Let me flash these real quick. 4.21, 4.33, 4.34, 4.36, 4.39, 4.39. Like it's just loaded with fast guys. Troy Franklin ran a 4.41, the poor guy, and nobody cares about him. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Already, you coward.
It's so funny. Dude, it's crazy. It's crazy. So Walker, I mean, running a 4.36 at his size was pretty damn impressive. I mean, you watch the tape, he was always flying down the field, but it's just a matter of how refined his game actually is. And he really struggled at the Senior Bowl. I was kind of hoping for a better Senior Bowl performance out of him, but he's 6'2", 193, 96th percentile, 40-yard dash. His burst score was 98th percentile, which is crazy for that size. But another guy that has had kind of a weird career, never had over 1,000 yards, had a weird transfer situation out of Kent State. But he also has 33-inch arms, which is 87th percentile. So, I mean, he's got like all the size and speed things, but the first thing I think about when I think about this guy is Marquez Valdes-Scantling, because he's huge, he's fast, can't really catch, and doesn't do a whole lot other than go long. It just feels like the obvious comparison. What are you seeing out of him?
I think that makes sense. I think it's just going to come down to like how big of a run on receivers are going to go in the top 2 rounds.
Yeah.
Whether he goes in like, I think he's like maybe like a mid to late day 2 guy.
Yeah, I would say like fringe 2-3, rounds 2 and 3 maybe.
Yeah,
I mean, some teams just going to fall in love with the speed. That just happens every year.
I mean, even MVS, like as much as we make fun of him for like fantasy wise, like he was an asset for like as a blocker, like that's important to teams. So like that kind of stuff is going to get you bumped up. I don't know special teams wise or anything like that. Usually you're not looking at that day 2, but like that stuff matters. Size, strength at receiver. So
I mean, even if you're not getting targeted, stretching the field is important. And that's why I do think a lot of these guys like all these guys running so fast, all these guys are going to be no questions asked rounds 1, 2, and 3. Like none of these guys are falling to round 4 unless there's something seriously wrong. Because every team values speed. There's no doubt about it. And I mean, I think I've heard multiple press conferences from the combine with teams trying to just add speed. They're just like, we're just like the Titans, for example. I think they're, as a Rand Carthon, I think is their GM. And he went up and said, like, we just need to get faster. Like, I don't care what we do. We just got to get faster on offense. And that's a perfect example because that team was slow this last year with Hopkins and Henry. So I think like they're going to be in the mix too in the second round. So we'll see something like that for sure. But let's go to Leggett. You know, we talked about him for a minute, but, you know, 4.39 with his profile was very, very impressive. He was another guy that maybe wasn't blowing people away at the Senior Bowl, but he was fine. I mean, he functioned, and he looked like he was running pretty good routes. But he's got just one of the worst prospect profiles from a production standpoint that I think I can even remember. I mean, he literally could not get on the field for his first 3 or 4 years at school at South Carolina at all, and really only produced in his senior season when I think he's going to be 24. So let me look at this real quick. Let's find some Xavier Leggett in here. Yeah, he's 23 right now. His first 3 seasons at South Carolina were 113 yards, 7 catches, 8 catches for 63, 18 catches for 167. We're in Jeff Janis territory. And then this last year, 71 catches for 1,200 yards out of nowhere. So you really got to wonder what was happening those first 3 years. And especially because he was always a big guy. It's not like he was, you know, a tiny guy, but 6'1", 221. You got to get that guy involved.
If you're somebody that looks at like breakout age, like I don't think he's even draftable for you. Like,
yeah, if you subscribe to that, this is probably not your guy. That's for sure.
It's a pretty good metric.
It does work when you when you work it into the rest of all the different metrics out there. It isn't pretty important, but you know, Brian Edwards had a good one too. So it's like you know, anything could happen basically. But Leggett was an interesting one. Charlie Campbell actually posted on his big board today a nice little blurb about Leggett. So I'm going to pull it up. He said, according to team sources, they were impressed with Leggett in 2023 and his combine, and has risen into first round contention, which would be crazy considering all the other talent that's kind of in that blockade there at the end of the first round. I mean, if you think that he's going to turn into that next like Debo-y kind of guy, then sure, go ahead. But his last mention was, well, he was supposed to be 6'3". I think he only ended up at 6'1", which was kind of a disappointment. If he continues to work out well and intervine well, Leggett could continue to rise leading up to the NFL draft. He's gotten that process off to a nice start with the well-practiced Senior Bowl. So, I mean, like it seems like, and Charlie's very plugged in. He knows people. So like he's got him 23 on his big board, which is very high.
He's the wide receiver 5 on ESPN's big board.
I mean, so it's not like this is a surprise, I guess. I mean, it seems like a surprise because there's so many other receivers this year, but like it's one of the most crazy classes I can remember. So, I mean, he might just get pushed down to the second, third, whatever, just because of the depth. I mean, it's an interesting one. Let's go to our next guy who's also kind of in this muck. It's Troy Franklin at 4.41. It felt like a bad combine for him, but it's not. It's like 4.41 is nothing to scoff at. I think his other metrics were pretty weak though. I remember I was listening to another podcast. Yeah, actually they were pretty good. So his 90th percentile. We're talking about a 90th percentile 40-yard dash, and people are like, I don't know about this guy. Speed score was average at best. Burst score is 83rd percentile. His catch radius is at 88th percentile. 6'2", 176 was his official weigh-in, so not big, very thin. The first thought I got when I was watching him was like, I just got like a lot of Robbie Anderson vibes just because of his like stature. I don't think he really plays the same. He's just like an interesting player. Like he doesn't wow you in any real like categories, but I feel like he has something to him that the NFL would really like. And he's been very productive over the last 2 years. He broke out age 19 had 891 yards, and then this past year he had 1,300 yards and 14 touchdowns. And some people think that his secondary receiver, I forgot his name off the top of my head, is going to be a high draft pick next year as well. So he had competition, and he still got peppered with targets. So I think Franklin, quote, hurt himself this week somehow, but I think it was mostly because all the other receivers ran in that 4.3 range and kind of bumped him down. But he's another, like, a Chiefs fit. It just makes sense for the Chiefs in my head. Like, he just kind of seems like a Chiefs guy, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I like him. I once again, just bagging on these Texas receivers. I like him better than both of the Adonai ends.
People really like Troy Franklin. I know a lot of folks in the community really, really like him, and they have him as their number 4 or 5 as well. Let's talk about a guy that did not run well, which is felt like the only guy that didn't run well was Keon Coleman at 4.61. He was kind of like made out to be this freak too, heading into the draft. There was quite a bit of chatter online about him. Oh, he's going to run really fast, and the separation isn't an issue or whatever, and then does not answer any of those questions at all. I believe he was 6'3", 213, ran a 4.61, which is a 26th percentile. His burst score was pretty high at 128. So maybe it was just a couple of bad runs for him, but 4.61 is not ideal, and never really was ultra productive in either location at Michigan State or at Florida State. He was kind of like a middling receiver. So, I mean, he was a guy that was late first. Like, to me, it seemed like a late first kind of guy. And then now I don't know how you could draft this guy over all those other guys with the metrics that you see now. It'd be tough.
So Florida State is pretty much the only team that I actually caught this year. I watched. Not an overly impressive passing game, even before the injury.
Not at all.
So watching him, I like his tape.
It's hard not to. The guy just mosses everybody. It's insane. He's got the best hands in the draft. There's no problem with his hands.
Great tape, even without the production. And I will give you this nugget. He ran the fastest gauntlet drill of all the receivers.
He did. You're absolutely. That's a great nugget.
Here's the second part of the nugget. Do you know who ran the fastest gauntlet drill last year?
That's a wonderful question. I don't know, Sean. You have to tell me.
This is a receiver that ran in the mid 4.5s last year, and his name is Puka Nacua.
Oh boy, here we go.
So,
oh boy, here we go. This I don't want to call it a hot take, but it's just facts. It's just facts.
I'm just telling you the facts.
It's just facts. You do with that information what you
want.
I'm
not saying he's my wide receiver 1. He's probably like in my top like 7 or 8. But
yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, if you really just sit down and like watch all of his catches are highlight catches because he gets 0 separation whatsoever. But I don't know if it's because like he's lazy or like he's not running as hard as, because like his burst score should be like, yeah, you got short area quickness, like you should be able to be open. And I just don't know what it is.
You know who else doesn't separate at all, and when they're healthy is a beast?
DeAndre Hopkins. Mike Williams is another one. There's plenty of guys that do that.
He is uber productive when he's not hurt.
It's funny. Every time I think of Keon Coleman, and this might tip my draft hand, but I don't care. I think we got Marvin Jones on our hand here. I think this might be another Marvin Jones. He never separated. He hates separation. All he does is get together with guys, and he was awesome.
Keon Coleman might have better hands than Marvin Jones. Sorry, buddy.
Oh, I'm not even doubting it. Keon Coleman's hands are insanity, dude. Like he does not drop passes at all, even in the worst situations. So I don't know. Like that was the first thing I thought. I was like, okay, this guy does not really get a whole lot of separation, but he sure as hell wins a lot of contested catches. So I'm looking forward to him. I'd like to see where he lands, obviously, but like
I think he's gonna go in the first. His size is gonna get him a first round pick.
Interesting. I would take the other side. I think he goes second or third.
I think there's going to be a fine line between whether he's like a Mike Williams or he's like a Josh Doxson.
Yeah, he's going to be one of those guys we know very fast if he's a bust or not. It's going to be like a disaster scenario, or he's going to be a stud. but I don't feel great after the combine. That's for sure about him, and I feel like there's going to be some issues with teams seeing these other guys with these great numbers, and they'll just kind of push him down a little bit and say, we can get a receiver later, and it'll be like Keon Coleman, maybe a team in the first round that passes, like for example, like a Jacksonville. If they,
I think with all of those guys getting pushed up, I think he's just like he's like the swerve, like that a team might be wanting to like take. It's kind of like last year where Quentin Johnston went in the first round because he was like the only big guy.
Yeah, he was literally pushed up because of his size.
So he's just like a much different flavor than everybody else, and that might actually give him some like time between now and the draft.
Yeah, I mean things will change, of course, too. Whenever I thought of Keon Coleman's game, like I think a team fits, and I always just thought like Dallas made sense because they kind of need that like bigger body like red zone guy, and I really think like he would fit nicely in that. And if he went to Dallas, I feel like he would jump up dynasty draft boards quite a bit as well. Even if it was the second round, I still think that would be a pretty interesting slot. So let's go to running backs. I didn't have anything for quarterbacks and tight ends because there was not a whole lot to talk about. But let's talk about three of the running backs I thought were interesting. Trey Benson being the first one, running a 4.39 at 6'1", 223. I think I'm going to look it up just to confirm. But that's a great time for him. It was 6 foot 216, so he's 97th percentile for 40-yard dash and 98th percentile for speed score, which is crazy. I mean, like how many guys have I said so far that are in the 90s of these percent? Like it's truly one of the most crazy combines I can remember. But Benson, if you look at all of his metrics, it's almost the same as Breece Hall. It's almost the same. Now, the production profile, completely different, and you watch him on tape, completely different. But like from an athletic standpoint, he's almost the same. So that's pretty interesting. But he did have a couple of pretty productive years for the Florida State Seminoles at 990 yards last year and then 905 this year. More touchdowns this year, 15 of them. But he's a guy, who was in that discussion for that top back spot. I mean, this definitely helps his case. I still think a lot of folks like Jonathan Brooks as the first running back to come off the board, but after that, it could be literally anybody. So I would say he's probably the favorite for RB2, right?
I think so. After that, I mean, we're gonna find out if he's like a workout warrior or if he was just not in a good offense for him at Florida State. But I mean, the workout definitely doesn't hurt, and it's not a strong running back class anyway. So any positive is going to give you a good boost in this draft.
And I think it was a good decision for him to come out as a junior because, like you said, this is not a strong running back class, and it basically like him and then the next guy we're going to talk about, Jalen Wright, is another one who ran a 4.38. I mean, if you could do anything to separate yourself from the pack of this kind of a weird running back year, I mean, it's got to be one of the weakest running back drafts in a long time that I can remember. Jalen Wright at 5'11", 210, ran a 4.38, 98th percentile, another one, 90 whatever percentile. It's just insane. 95th percentile on speed score and the 95th percentile on burst. So, I mean, he's been good for Tennessee last couple of years, 875 in 2022, 1013 in 2023, and he's only 20. So, as another guy, we'll have to see where the landing spot. This is all going to be landing spot dependent, I feel like, with the running backs. I mean, if you throw, any of these guys on the Chargers or, a high flying running back slot, these guys are going to fly up the board.
They're not going to have a lot of cap to sign like a great running back in free agency. So whichever of these rookies goes there, it's going to be.
That's a lock first round pick in our draft, I would imagine.
Yeah, maybe.
I'd be very surprised if they didn't. Like, let's say Jonathan Brooks is weird because the ACL, but like anybody that goes to the Chargers, I feel like is a minimum 2.5 or higher. Like, it's just because of the workload there.
Does it feel like too like obvious that they're just going to like take Blake Corum in like the third or fourth round?
I was thinking the same thing. I mean, he ran exactly what he was supposed to run. I think he ran like a 4.53 and did like exactly what everybody thought, and there was no chatter about him whatsoever because the rest of the combine was so insane. but like I would not be. I really don't think. I think Jonathan Brooks will go day 2, and I don't think there's gonna be another running back till round 4. I think it's gonna be insane. I think it's gonna be a weird
it
year.
won't be. Yeah, I don't think anybody's going in the top 2 rounds for sure. I think that's a lock.
I think you could argue Jonathan Brooks in the second, maybe. But like, I think just the NFL is higher on him than a lot of other folks are. But I don't think there's going to be any of those other running backs until rounds 4 through 7. Maybe Trey Benson after that crazy run. But I don't know. I just don't think it's going to be a big running back draft at all. So
yeah, it's very eclectic. I will say that the running backs in this draft are all over the place.
You got like different sizes, you got different speeds, you got catching backs, you got receiving backs, running backs. Like
it's just a bunch of guys that are going to go into committees and muddy everything up in the league. That's what
it is true. It's going to be another guy that goes to like, I don't know, like the Jets and just like somehow siphons carries away from Breece Hall just to ruin people's day.
Give me like a smaller running back that everybody likes in fantasy real quick. Like
Jaylen Warren.
Somebody that's a little more like has a little more like the backfield already.
Oh, my head went to Austin Eckler, but that doesn't really work. I don't know.
I was trying
what
to think
are you thinking?
I'm just saying like a guy like that in a good situation, and then bam, like Braylon Allen gets drafted there, and you literally don't get a goal line carry next year.
Well, I mean, the year before it's like Michael Carter, right? Like he was drafted in like the 3rd round or whatever. And everybody's like, oh, Michael Carter this, Michael Carter that. And then they bring in Breece Hall and he's just like literally tossed aside. So, I mean, the running back landscape is so crazy. Anything could change at any time. But, I mean, there's definitely going to be a few of these guys that get thrown into the mix and, go to a team like even like Tennessee, just with Tyjae Spears maybe as the lead guy. And then they just chuck another guy in there who's big or something just to kind of fill that role that Derrick Henry left. I think anything is on the in the cards basically. So, all right. So with that, let's wrap up the combine talk, and we're gonna go into our next. We're gonna have a little game for Sean. We're gonna see what he thinks in terms of free agency fits. We're gonna call it our matchmaker game. So I'm gonna ask Sean about a player, and he's gonna tell me where this person is going to land in free agency, and I'm gonna score this, Sean. I'm gonna keep track because I want to. I want to see. I want to see what you end up with.
But, I will say real quick, I'm shocked that you didn't ask me anything about JJ McCarthy. But anyway,
I did not. But I know the fans really want to hear about it. So, what did you think of JJ McCarthy's combine?
It's fine. Like
he's fine. He missed a bunch of throws.
Yeah, he ran like what was like this top 10 3-cone all time for quarterbacks. That's fun.
That is a fun stat. That's a fun stat.
He's very quick, which will be good. Like his pocket manageability will be good in the NFL, most likely. So you like that?
Charlie has him at 37 on his big board.
Who Charlie does? Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not like. I'm not saying that I love him. I'm saying I think this is what's going to happen because the league wants like the Brock Purdy type. Like that's
I just think like. Every conversation I've heard about JJ McCarthy this year is so similar to what we were doing last year with Will Levis. It's like this fringe 1st-round prospect that just gets pushed up because quarterback, especially with all the teams that need quarterback.
Very different player.
Totally different play style.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is like it's that fact that it's a quarterback and teams need him, and everybody thinks people are so desperate that they're going to draft a Will Levis. I think there was even a point where like a top 10 talk about Will Levis last year. Like that was he's never worth that, but it's just like the positional need was so important. So, I mean, McCarthy's interesting because he won the national championship, right? Like he had all the eyes to begin with. Like Will Levis never had that. So I think there's a better chance for JJ McCarthy to get into that, top whatever 2015, but it just feels so similar in terms of like we're just going to keep propping up these guys that maybe don't deserve this because of the positional need.
I hope Alex watches this because he's going to love this comparison.
Here we
go. His nickname for me is going to be Zoolander because he can't throw left.
Ooh, Zoolander references here on the podcast.
The dude cannot throw to the left side of the field to save his life, and it's hilarious.
I gotta be honest, I've watched zero tape on him. I need to. I probably need to, but like I don't want to. I'm not excited about it because it's just there's not a lot going on.
You could
But
literally just overload and then just put a corner like on an island on the left side of the field, and you would be fine.
so what you're saying is he's raw.
Yeah, he's a year away from being a year away, but
Oh
he
my
won't
God.
be because he's probably going to go top 10 or top 15.
I mean, if he goes, based on what you're telling me, if he goes top 15, that's stupid. But
I,
anywho,
I don't.
let's go to the matchmaker. I don't want to talk about JJ McCarthy's left.
There's only 2 quarterbacks that should be going in the top 20 in this draft. I'll tell you that.
I would pretty much agree with that. But it's always about the need, right? So, all right, let's start with this first player. Sean, you're going to tell me where this person lands, and we're going to start right off at the top with Kirk Cousins. Where is he going, and why?
He's going to the Dirty Birds.
At Atlanta Falcons. Wow.
I think Arthur Blank is old, and he's going to just dish out the cash to get a quarterback that can at least help them contend. I don't think he's got time for a rookie quarterback. So that's where I'm going.
I mean, I like the spot. It does feel interesting though that they're gonna go after. I mean, how old is Cousins now? Like 36 or something?
It's 35.
So I mean, so Matt Ryan at the end of his career got him to that Super Bowl. So I mean, there is some connection maybe there. But then that the wheels fell off that pretty fast. But you know, I don't think anybody's projecting Kirk Cousins to just fall off a cliff this year. So, but I just don't know what kind of deal Atlanta would give to Kirk Cousins. Like, would it be
3 years,
like a
20 fully guaranteed?
Which is crazy. I still can't believe the fully guaranteed thing, but it's going to happen with him.
I think 340 a year, fully guaranteed.
He has all the leverage.
Yeah,
I mean, he is the best quarterback out there right now.
Is he the best quarterback to ever hit free agency multiple times?
I think so. At least he's at least one of them. I mean, you can't tell me that there's been.
And he was franchised twice.
Yeah, like this, and I don't know what that says about him. Just maybe it's like
he was great until he got hurt last year. I thought he was playing.
Dude, he was really good. He was playing out of his mind. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He's a good quarterback. Like, and I've always been a hater, but like he's a good player. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and say he's not, but it's weird that a guy like this has been passed around so much. It just feels like a guy that maybe should have had that long-term deal the whole time, and it had to come down to money. Obviously, with the guaranteed contract thing was insane, but it's kind of he set himself up for another one, so you can't even hate the decision to do that. So, but yeah, I have heard that, like, I think there was a rumor going around that he was looking at like real estate in like the Atlanta area and stuff like that. So it kind of feels like it makes sense. And of course, if it doesn't work out, they're not locked in for 5 years or whatever. It's going to be probably a 2 or 3 year deal of some kind. So it makes sense. I agree.
Just can't see them going with a rookie after.
I don't think that's in the cards at all.
Yeah.
I think you got a better shot at seeing like Jameis Winston play there, honestly. Like I think any of these other, quote, veteran guys they're not looking for rookies, I don't think, unless something crazy happens where they can't land any of the big free agent guys, not even like no Russell, none of that. I could see them going in that direction where it's just like, okay, maybe now we have to go rookie because we have no other choice, but they can't enter the season with Desmond Ridder. That's all I know.
They can always play Heineke.
Jesus Christ, I can't do another year of that. Dude, that Bucks game I went to, it was Bucks Atlanta in Atlanta. That game where they barely won with that K. Dot and touchdown. Dude, that was the worst quarterback game I think I've ever seen between him and Baker. Like, dude, it was horrible. It's like one of the worst games. Like, Desmond Ridder could not hit a 4-yard out route. I was like, all right, well, that's all I need to see out of this guy. I just can't do it. All right, let's talk about this next guy on our matchmaker list, and this is Saquon Barkley, which is another, arguably the best running back to hit free agency, like in his prime. Like it's pretty wild.
Two of them.
Yeah, 2 really good ones. Yeah.
So I've got him going to the Texans. I just think there's a lot of smoke there right now.
Dude, how scary would the Texans be then?
God, I want it so bad. I would be.
That would be wild. That would be wild. Christian would finally get his wish. He's be a Texas fan.
Owen Daniels would come out of retirement, sign a
Yeah, Garrett Graham would come back. It would be awesome. Everybody would have a great time. That would be a sick landing spot for him. I don't think the only person that would be upset would be Alex with the Damian Pierce situation, but
he's gone anyway.
But how could he be gone? Like he's like a replacement player. So he'll be a backup, I'm sure. But are they going to cut him? He took him in the 4th round. He didn't make any money.
Yeah, unless he's playing special teams as well. I don't know.
Now, like Singletary could be gone. I think he's a free agent anyway.
He's a free agent. Yeah.
So like, okay, so they keep Pierce and there's a backup.
They might just bring him back. He'll probably just come back on like the minimum.
They do love hoarding veteran running backs too, with like the Rex Burkhead times. Like they definitely like the veteran running back in that front office. But yeah, this would be a 6 spot for. I mean, Scavelli would be jumping through hoops if this happens. So, so I would agree. I think that's the most likely landing spot at this point. So let's talk about a guy that I frankly have no idea what they're going to do. It's Calvin Ridley. I guess it's a tough one.
I sent him to Carolina. I didn't really know what to do with him either.
That would be an interesting one. I mean, it makes sense.
They're probably going to overpay for a receiver, and they might as well overpay for the quote unquote number 1 receiver.
I just don't feel good about paying him any money. I don't think it's going to work. He's going to gamble it away.
I think he's going to turn 30 next season already.
Which is absurd to think about. Because he was an old rookie. He was 24 when he came in, and then he missed the year. It's funny. NFL.com has him as the number 8 free agent this year, which I think is very high.
They watch him last season?
I don't know. I just don't think he's
so up and down. A lot of drops.
He's 29 right now, by the way. He's not a number 1 receiver. He's a number 2. So if you're gonna pay him like he's a number 1, that's a huge mistake. But I could see the Panthers doing that because that's kind of what they're known for.
They almost like have to. Like they gotta pay somebody.
They did the same thing last year with Thielen. They just like, okay, he's the best guy, we'll pay him, whatever. Like, I mean, it kind of worked out, but I mean, they're definitely drafting one and they're definitely signing one. So, I mean, it's gonna be weird. Like Jonathan Mingo is still there. Like, who the hell knows what happens with him? He stunk last year, but so did that whole offense. So it's tough to tell.
Yeah.
Let's go to our next guy. It's Marquise Brown, much better player. He's an interesting guy. I feel like there's a lot of good landing spots for him, but I feel like he's going to also warrant some decent cap number as well. He's 27.
I've got him going to the New England Patriots.
That seems like a Patriots kind of guy. Seems like a Patriots kind of guy.
Well, do we know what a Patriots guy is?
I mean, Gerard Mayo still there? I feel like it's very Belichickian.
Yeah, but I don't remember his first name. Wolf is running the team.
Oh, Elliot Wolf, yeah. Well, I thought he was always their like top guy anyway, outside of Belichick. But Belichick always made the decisions.
It's a team. They need speed. Like they need it so bad. They've got.
They need anything. They need to trade down, dude.
A nice little like underneath receiver, but they need somebody that can get the top off defense. So I like that. I mean.
I can't think of one position they don't need.
Well, that's true.
Literally the entire offense is awful.
They're pretty good at cornerback.
Yeah, I mean, like secondary wise, like they got Kyle Duggar, who they franchised. He's pretty good too. I thought he was franchised, but
did they put a transition tag on him?
Maybe that would make some sense. But yeah, like they have some guys in the back.
I mean, we've got their defense.
But offensively, they have nothing.
Yeah,
it's an empty cupboard.
Well, once we name all these players, I'll talk about them more.
Okay. Marquise. So here, let's while we're on Marquise Brown, if Christian Kirk was worth $18 million a year, what is Marquise Brown worth?
I think he's going to get a 1-year prove-it deal
at age 28.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be pretty wild.
I don't think his market's going to be great with all of these rookies coming in. I think a lot of teams.
I think that's going to hurt. Yeah, you're right.
It's a great draft. It's going to push
with speed too. With speed, like that's his only thing that he really has going for him.
Not entirely special compared to like everybody that's coming out. He's very, very similar.
No, you're 100% right. It's going to be an interesting year for him.
I think 1 year, 10 with incentives up to like 14, 15.
That's a good deal. I mean, frankly, he might be one of the better bargains this year if that's the case. But I'm
And
not
he's
giving
also coming
him.
off a really down year with a heel injury that was very like, I don't know, like
It was
mysterious.
just a weird. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, and then he had Clayton Tune throwing him the ball, so
Mhm.
wasn't a great year for that offense in general. I threw away this whole year for him. So
Yeah, same,
um,
same.
so anywho, let's go to the next guy. Let's go to another quarterback. We got a little run on quarterbacks coming up here, Sean. So be ready for it. So this next one's Russell Wilson, who is going to be cut by the Denver Broncos. What do you think here?
I'll tell you what. I woke up yesterday. I went and I got my haircut. My barber, big Raiders fan. He wants
Oh,
him.
okay.
He
He
wants him.
wants him. He
I tried to
wants
take
him.
him out of it. I told him, I was like, I don't even think he's a starter in the NFL anymore, but listen, I'm going to take your word for it. He's going to Vegas.
All right, so if Sean gets this wrong, blame his barber.
No,
It's the guy. He understands. But I cannot imagine wanting Russell Wilson or feeling good about it at this point. It's not good. But I do feel like that's a good spot for him in terms of like cap space and like all their other situations. Like they could basically just run him this year. If he stinks, pick a rookie next year, whatever, no big deal. And he's not going to command any money.
the sentiment from like fans and stuff like that is that like if they go with a rookie, then Devontae Adams might not want to stick around.
That's very true. That is true. And I mean, from a fantasy perspective, if you own Devonte Adams, you kind of want a Russell Wilson in there, just because you know he's going to at least feed him and get him
Yeah.
his numbers. So I mean, I thought like another spot would be interesting for Russell, but then I kept thinking I was like, I don't think that team's going to do it. So let's get to our next one here. It's Jameis Winston, and this is the guy I think that would do it to this team. I'm thinking, I want to see if you're thinking the same thing.
We're not. He's going. I think he's going to Denver.
Okay, interesting. I was thinking him Steelers. That was my thought because he seems like a Tomlin kind of guy. Like he could work with Tomlin,
Yeah, I
and he's like the perfect level of competition for Pickett and Rudolph too.
I think Sean Payton is so big about having his guys around, and he had Jameis before. And he's already
Yeah,
brought in a lot of previous players that have played for him. It just feels right.
it really does feel like it makes sense, and that would be another guy that would you could bring Jameson, have Stidham, and then it doesn't force your hand in the drafts where it like you're sitting at 12 and you don't have to take Bo Nix or McCarthy or any of these guys because you don't feel like you can get through the year. Um, so I do think that's a good spot for him. Let's see here. I'm actually writing down some of these as we go, just so I have a record. Next up is going to be Jacoby Brissett, and I
This was
thought this was
the
an interesting
hardest.
one because
This was
I
my
truly,
hardest one.
I do think this is one of the hardest ones, and I really think Jacoby Brissett should be given a whole year to see what he could do. I don't think he's that bad. I feel like he's an average NFL quarterback that could be like middle of the pack.
I put two teams down. I could not narrow it down to one. One would give him most likely a year as a starter, and the other one would be he would be a probably end up being a bridge.
Okay,
So
okay,
the bridge is I'm assuming they draft a quarterback is going to be Minnesota,
okay. That would be an interesting spot for him.
and then the starting job I think is Pittsburgh.
That'd be crazy. Just like what a weird dude. The Steelers would have a weird quarterback room if that's the case.
He feels like a Steeler to me. I know you were talking about Jameis feeling like a Steeler. Like Brissett feels like a Steeler to me.
Dude, he would look great in that uniform. Like I would be all in on Brissett. I'd be all in.
Tibbs can give us his comment on that one, but he just feels like a Steeler to me.
So okay, so for the sake of being wrong for this, what would be your final choice?
I fucking hate watching Kenny Pickett. I'm just gonna send him to Pittsburgh.
Dude, Kenny Pickett stinks.
He's terrible.
I tried to like him. I tried so hard. And that guy stinks. He does not have it.
I picked them to win the division last year, thinking he was gonna have a nice little breakout, and I'm out. I'm just out.
I'm out as well. He gave me hope in that preseason too. I was like, oh shit, maybe he's good.
Was
But
was
no.
that the last quarterback on your list?
I believe so. So I think we're going to Derrick Henry next.
Before we go to Derrick Henry, 2 quarterbacks, real quick. Are we both assuming Baker Mayfield is back in Tampa?
I can't imagine he's not.
Okay.
So
So this guy's not a free agent, but I feel like Justin Fields should probably be part of this conversation because
yeah, I think that's fair, just in terms of matchmaking. Yeah,
and I've got him going to the Patriots.
that would be kind of awful. I hate the Patriots so much already, and then just that whole offense would be so bad. It would be horrible.
If I'm the Patriots, I'm sending a third because the market apparently is not good for Fields. So you're getting
and frankly, why would it be? Like, why would it be good?
Because Darnold got like a second and a fourth a couple years ago.
Yeah,
he's better than Darnold.
Teams are stupid though.
Yeah, but he's better than Darnold.
Yeah, he is better than Darnold.
I can't send you like a third and a future like sixth or a conditional 6th or 7th round pick for him. I would do that in a heartbeat because I think he would be the 3rd best quarterback in this draft class.
Man, I'm just lower on Fields. I think I'm not in.
I don't think
he can't throw.
I don't think I don't know, man. I don't see any of these other guys. Daniels, I don't think has a chance to be better than him. McCarthy's not going
to. I would definitely take Daniels over Justin Fields.
No, I'm out.
Just for the sheer hope that he can throw the ball.
Dude is 40, 50 pounds lighter than Justin Fields. At least Fields can take a hit.
He has to because he's a running back.
So is
I can't
Daniels.
Do it. I mean, yeah, but Daniels can really throw the ball though. Like I don't see Justin
like a jackass trying to get himself hurt all game.
We're gonna have a whole podcast on JJ McCarthy and Jaden Daniels.
No, it's not like either of them. I just think they're.
That's why I want to do it. It's gonna be insane. I don't know. I'm not a Justin Fields guy. I am out. So
if you're telling me like if I needed to start a rookie next year, like who the 3rd quarterback I would take is, it would probably be Bo Nix. But he doesn't have a lot of upside to me.
There's another guy. Like I just don't know what to do with these guys because I'm not a fan. Like he's 24.
Bo Nix is going to be a fringe like top.
Dude, he's Andy Dalton. He's Andy Dalton.
Yeah, he's going to be a fringe top 30 quarterback for the next 10 years.
There's no player I feel more confident about turning into Andy Dalton than Bo Nix. He's just literally designed for that.
So anyway, I've got.
Okay, I added those 2 to the list. So
if I'm them, I trade for Fields. Then I move down to 6 with the Giants.
For the Patriots, it really works though. It really does.
Get your capital back. Take whichever of the 3 wide receivers are left at 6. And now you get a quarterback and a top-tier receiver, and your offense automatically looks much better.
To me, Patriots, they have to trade down. They have to.
Yeah.
Like it just makes too much sense. They have way too many holes. This draft is too deep, especially in the first 3 rounds. And somebody's going to want to move up to 3.
Yeah.
It just makes too much sense.
I think once you get outside of like the top 13 or 14, I think there's a good shift down in talent. Not a ton, but like the top 13 to 14 players in this draft are
you're studs.
Legit. Yeah, they are.
Yeah, if they trade down to 6, they can get whatever they probably were originally going to get at 3 anyway. It doesn't even matter.
The Giants are stupid enough to move capital to move up from 16.
It seems like Giants, Vikings, and even the Falcons if they didn't get Kirk. I mean, like,
yeah,
there's options. Like, there's going to be somebody that would want to come up. So, okay, let's go to Henry now then.
Yeah, I like him in the Ravens. I mean,
it's just such a great fit though.
The rumors were there last year.
I mean, him and Keaton Mitchell would be a perfect 1-2.
I like if not the Ravens like going to play for the Chargers, I think makes a lot of sense with Harbaugh, but I think he's going to choose John.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I feel like Henry, he's not going to cost as much as you would probably, whatever you would have got a couple of years ago, obviously. So, I mean, he's still going to fetch a pretty penny, but the Ravens always find a way to make a deal with the veteran running back. I feel like they have these guys every year.
He could go into like mercenary mode and just start signing 1-year deals until he's just toast. Like,
they make a lot of money doing that.
You probably get more in a 1-year contract. Just sign like a 1-year, like.
I mean, if he blows it up with the Ravens, he's going to get another deal somewhere else or back with the Ravens again.
Like 1 year, like $9-10 million for Derrick Henry. Like I think he's still.
I mean, Dalvin Cook got what, like 12?
Yeah, I think he still commands.
Yeah,
that much, but even for being How old is he? 29? 28?
I think he's gonna be 30 next year. But I'll give whatever Dalvin got. I'll give him whatever Dalvin got.
Yeah.
Like it's too easy.
He led the league in carries last year.
Dude, I mean, he had a down year, but he also had freaking Will Levis as quarterback who got stacked boxes every 12 seconds. Like he was not going to run for big yardage last year.
One of the worst offensive lines in the league.
Terrible. Other than Skoronski, they have nobody.
Poor Peter Skoronski is fighting for his life out there.
Yeah, dude, it's like the guys. I mean, that as much as I didn't like them firing Vrabel, they did bring in a pretty good coaching staff. There's no doubt about that. I mean, like Brian and Bill Callahan. They're gonna whoever plays line for them is gonna be good.
Yeah, that's a sneaky move. The Browns losing Bill Callahan.
That is huge. I mean, that was the reason that line was so good for so long.
Very under the radar. I'd be curious to see what happens in Cleveland next year with the running game.
Anyway. Yeah, it's gonna be different. Yeah. Anywho, let's go to the next running back on the list. We got Josh Jacobs.
All right, this will be my third Patriot that we're sending to New England. I think he's
the Ramondre Stevenson stocks would be on shambles.
Does New England like Ramondre Stevenson? They don't really seem to, because every chance
Bill Belichick didn't.
Else in, they bring somebody in. So I think they're going to do it again because Ramondre is probably going to be gone after this year.
I mean, they always just bring in random veteran running backs. They do it all the time.
They've got $110 million in cap space to spend this offseason, and they're even for them who like they've never spent a lot of money. I think they're going to invest in their offense this offseason. So
it reminds me about that offseason they had a couple of years ago with like Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. They just threw the bag at these guys because they had all the cap space, and they just like, we got to do something. So we're going to just throw it at all offense. And frankly, this might be one of the worst offensive rosters in recent memory. So like, there's no reason to not do something.
They got to juice it, man. So like I said, Fields, take one of the top 3 receivers, add Josh Jacobs, draft offensive lineman. Literally just
and they'll be a much better team already.
Throw everything at your offense.
Yeah, it's not like these. A lot of times when you get to free agency, it's because the team that had them didn't want them for some reason. But this year it feels different, where there's quite a few players that are known for being one of the best at their position, like a Derrick Henry, a Saquon Barkley, Kirk Cousins. It's like it feels different, where it's like, okay, you can throw the money at these guys in free agency, and you don't have to really worry about them like busting on you because they're such studs. Whereas in past years, you have like I always think back to that horrific Bucks free agent class with Anthony Collins, Eric Wright, I think it was, and then that terrible defensive lineman. He's a Baker. Chris Baker or some Baker. I don't know. He's awful. Anywho, like they paid all these guys like hundreds of millions of dollars. None of them did anything. And it's like, okay, well, we can't fix our team through free agency, but this year I think you really have a good shot at it. So it's different.
I will say, like, hey, there's probably a better fit that makes more sense to put Jacobs, but I feel like if I were to go through and put like everybody in like the perfect fit, like that never happens. So I think
it never ever happens.
Like curveballs in there, and I just feels like he's going to go to the Patriots.
He feels like he's a Bama guy. I know they love Bama players up there too. Yeah. I just feel it makes sense. I like
it. Resting bitch face kind of guy. Perfect.
Yeah, just give him his bag and let him just freaking checks in the bank up there. All right, we got 2 more running backs. We got Austin Eckler next.
I'm sending him to Vegas.
Ooh. Let's see, Austin Eckler. So that's an interesting one because, I mean, assuming that Jacobs is not coming back, which seems very likely at this point that he's not going back, then they only have Zamir White, and this is a terrible running back class for the most part. It feels like a good chance for him to get the most amount of touches. It would be Vegas.
The Raiders love flashy things. He's a name.
He is definitely a name. I feel like he's a good fit, too, with Antonio Pierce as the head coach. He seems like that kind of guy.
Workout warrior.
Won't cost a lot. Yep. It makes sense. I feel, and at worst, you sign him, and if you want to bring in a rookie to pair with him and White, then that would be an option as well later on in the draft. So that one makes a lot of sense. And then the last guy we have on this list, Sean, is DeAndre Swift, and you know more about him than probably a lot of folks here because of the Eagles connection.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance he could come back with Philadelphia, but that's no fun. And the Giants lost Saquon Barkley, so I think he's just going to go a little bit south, south to Jersey. I'm going to send him to the Giants.
Okay, yeah, that's a good fit for him. I mean, that's another team I like without they have literally nobody on that roster right now. They could go in a lot of different directions, but they also are kind of like not in a great cap situation with Daniel Jones right now. So it's like they can't really afford to throw big money to running backs. So
Yeah,
I
I
could
could
see
see
like
them
a
doing
cheaper signing with Swift.
this. They could go with like just like committee of just like throwing like a bunch of minimum guys. Like you get like Gus Edwards or
Yeah, there's some
Antonio
lower
Gibson.
guys on the list too.
Yeah.
I think there's another running back I was looking at lower on the list that I was like, oh, that guy could be like, oh, even like a Singletary, like we were talking about him.
Yeah. Did you want to talk about Tony Pollard at all?
Did I must have missed him.
I haven't
Yeah,
gone back to the Cowboys.
I mean, I feel like a Cowboys is the natural, just like a cheaper deal with the Cowboys.
I think he's going to take a discount and he's going to stay in Dallas.
I mean, that would make sense, and I can't imagine they don't try to add more of a 1-2 down back as well. Ezekiel Elliott might come back. Who knows?
I sent Zeke to Philadelphia.
Ooh,
That was
I'll put that on your list. Just
that was one of
just
my extra
for your
credits.
scorecard. I won't count it against you though.
He's everything that we haven't had the last couple of years. He's
great pass protector,
and he can actually play on third down.
He's a phenomenal one. Like literally, might be the best pass protector. That'll be an interesting spot for him. I feel like it makes sense. All right, so to run it down again, we got Kirk Cousins going to the Falcons, Saquon Barkley going to the Texans, Calvin Ridley going to the Panthers, Marquise Brown to the Patriots, Russell Wilson to the Raiders, Jameis Winston to the Broncos, Jacoby Brissett to the Steelers, Baker Mayfield to the Bucks, Justin Fields to the Patriots, Derrick Henry to the Ravens, Josh Jacobs to the Patriots, Austin Eckler to the Raiders, DeAndre Swift to the Giants, and then Ezekiel Elliott extra credit to the Eagles. That's I like all those. I really do. I think there's a pretty decent chance a lot of that happens. I would love. Man, how sick would it be if you got them all right? I feel like it's a chance.
I'll throw out my extra credit receivers too.
Oh boy, here we go.
I got Gabe Davis going to the Titans.
Oh man, that just feels so perfect because he's fast. They say, oh, we want speed.
Darnell Mooney going to the Chiefs.
That's another one. I actually thought about that one too.
I got Mike Williams getting cut and signing with the Lions. And Tyler Boyd to the Cardinals.
Okay. Yeah, Boyd actually makes a lot of sense. They just need like any veteran presence there.
Mm-hmm.
That actually makes some sense. All right, so Mike, the Lions one is interesting.
They literally don't have a guy like that on the roster, and I think you can get him dirt cheap. I mean, he's high risk, but like the reward is like you don't necessarily need him, but like you would like to have him if he's healthy.
Yeah, I feel like that's another like key on Coleman's spot would be like a later round, like third round pick to the Lions. Like they could use a kind of bigger body guy.
They've got the speed with Jameson. They've got like the overall receiver number one, Amon-Ra. He's just a body type that they don't have on the roster. I like that fit.
Yeah, that's a good fit. All right, so now we're going to go into the redraft of the 2021 draft. We're not going to go in future podcasts. We're not going to go into 2022 because it's a little bit too soon for those guys. But I think 21 is probably the border of what's truly acceptable. We're going to start this off. We're going to alternate picks. So I'm going to have 1-1, and I'm going to give Sean 1-2, and we'll go back and forth.
Are we taking them based off of what they've done and projecting, or?
I think it's a little of both. I think it'd be really hard to do like what they've done and then just only look at that because I think there's a few guys that we'll be looking at here towards the end of this first round probably that have a little bit of that upside still in the tank maybe. So let's start with a nice and easy one. Number 1, I picked Jamar Chase. I don't think that's gonna alter anything. I mean, there's now a little bit of an argument to be made perhaps if you might be a one Lake Lure long gamer. So we don't even need to talk about Jamar Chase.
Who's scored more points since going into the NFL?
I don't know. It sounds like it might be your guy. Who are you picking at 1-2, Sean?
That Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah, I mean, picked him at 2-7 originally, which is crazy. And Amari Rodgers went one pick ahead of him, which is even crazier. It was that, and then I think I picked Trey Lance ahead of him too, which really worked out well.
I remember being between him and Diami Brown for my pick.
And I picked Diami Brown
And
no less than 2 hours ago.
So like 2 weeks later, I was like, oh no.
Dude, I was so fucking wrong on that guy. He
Sliding
stinks.
door moments, man.
Yeah, dude. Seriously. Well, there's another. I feel like he reminds me a lot of like the Brandon Ayuk pick too, where it was like a late 2, I think, and it was just like, I don't know, maybe this could work out, I guess, perhaps, and then it like slams. It's like, okay, this is awesome. But Amon-Ra is much more talented, I think. Well, maybe not talented, but he's in much better situation to get a shit ton of targets. So definitely a good spot. So let's go to 1-3. I think this is where it opens up a little bit. I've it between 3 guys, and I think I went with the safest overall player here, and I went Devontae Smith at 1-3. And I think you can make an argument about the other couple of guys that I'll let you discuss when you get to your pick, but I just like the safeness. I mean, he's pretty much a lock for like 1,000 yards. He's going to get his 7-8 touchdowns. And he's only 25. He's got at least 3-4 good years left in him. And with his play style, especially, I would have a hard time passing on him here for one of these other guys that maybe have a little bit more risk involved in some way. So who are you taking at 1-4?
Yeah, it would have been between 2 guys at 1-3 for me. I probably would have gone to Devontae Smith. And then this next guy, just the positional advantage he has over the rest of this draft for the most part, I'm going to go with ETN.
Yeah, he was my number 4 guy as well. And realistically, I mean, he had what a phenomenal year last year, and really didn't have a whole lot to work with with that entire offense. I mean, he still produced a big time with the touchdowns.
His efficiency took an absolute nosedive last year.
But that offensive line was a disaster too. Yeah. So I mean, I can't imagine it's going to get worse for him this year. I mean, the only thing here's the thing: are the Jacksonville Jaguars a team that just like throws in another running back pick for no reason? Like they're just
came out today that said they were gonna still work with Tank Bigsby. So I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know why you would put that out as smoke, but like that's
a weird thing to smoke screen about.
Yeah,
I don't know what they're doing over there. So let's go to 1-5, and my pick here is gonna be Jalen Waddle. I think he still has all the upside that you originally saw. Just a weird year for him last year. But I mean, the minute Tyreek Hill leaves, I think he's going to be a stud in that same role. So, and I frankly, I think there's a pretty big drop off after this pick. I don't know if you're seeing the same thing. So who are you picking at 1-6?
It's tough because we were 5 for 5 there. By the way, I had Waddle at 5.
Okay, yeah. So
it's tough because you go with the guy that's produced so far to this point, or you go with the guy that is absolutely broke out last year.
I think we might be thinking about the same people.
I'm going to give it to the guy that's already produced at a position that's just a dogfight to produce in right now in the NFL. So I'm going to go with the guy. I don't know if you've got the sound bit ready.
But... Sean, I have the sound bit. I always have the sound bit. I'm never getting rid of the sound bit.
Najee Harris.
There it is.
I have a plan in place.
I also have Najee Harris at 1. I mean, it makes sense. Like he's still getting carries. He's producing. He's doing everything you would expect him to do. But I mean, you would hope a little more out of the 1-1. But he's been fine, and I think he's going to be like another 1 or. I think it's his rookie contract maybe up this year. So that might be interesting for him. But he's in another spot.
Was he not a first rounder? Second rounder?
He was a first rounder, so he would have a 5th-year option if they wanted to pick that up. I need to look at his numbers again, like to see what his contract's up. But I thought this was his last year. But either way, I mean, he's going to get his touches. Warren is definitely going to eat into them again. Mm-hmm. But it's probably a good thing for him, to be honest. Like keep him fresher.
That backfield really works 50-50. It works.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Austin Eckler days when he was like kind of not the bell cow there. I forgot who the other running back was in that backfield. Who was the other running back with Eckler before he like truly broke out? There was another guy that he would split time with.
Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, it was Melvin. Yeah, it kind of feels like a similar situation, which is not a bad thing for fantasy. So okay, so at 1-7, I'll see if I took the other guy you were thinking about who broke out. I'm picking Nico Collins at 1-7.
7 for 7, man.
That's pretty nuts.
It's about to not be 7 for 7.
It's going to get interesting here. Yeah, it's going to certainly get interesting. I mean, Collins, he was originally picked at 3-2. Acquired him in that trade with Justin for Tua. I mean, Collins, he was like a stalwart for my team this year. I think he's going to be great again next year. I believe he's going into his contract year, so that's going to be even more incentive to play better. He's with CJ Stroud now. I mean, he looked great every time he got the ball last year, like a completely different receiver than what we saw the first couple of years. So I'm excited. I think this is another tier break as we're going to see here.
Yeah.
I want to hear who you have at 1-8.
I'm going to go with, just based off of fantasy production the last 3 years, I'm going to go with Justin Fields.
Okay, so we are definitely different on that one. Production wise, it certainly makes sense, and he's going to probably start again next year. So
yeah, he'll be a starter.
I mean, it'd be shocking if he wasn't a starter. So I mean, he's going to have another year's worth of value. So based on that pick, my 1-9 would be Ramondre Stevenson, and I don't love it, but like he has produced when he's on the field and when he's not hurt. He's looked very good and just finds his way into the Patriot doghouse of running backs that always seem to have something going on or somebody else touching the ball as well. It's never easy with the Patriots running backs. So, I mean, back to the Sony Michel days, back to the Lawrence Maroney days, to the Kevin Harris days, like Kevin White, whoever James White, it could have been anybody. Like there's so many. Yeah, another Kevin Falk is the one I was thinking of. There's just so many guys that touch the ball. Burkhead, I mean, who knows what you're going to get out of him every year, but I thought he made the most sense at this pick, and I don't love it, but I did not have Justin Fields in my first round of this draft, so that's.
I didn't have Ramondre in my first round.
You see these are the questions, Meg.
He was 11.
These are the questions.
I took the quarterbacks.
Seriously, what's crazy, like to redraft a 1 quarterback league, that Justin Fields would still be close even after the career he's had so far. It's pretty telling. This draft was not very good, like outside of the first round. A lot of these guys we've talked about were first round picks. There's only a couple sprinklings. I think it was Amon-Ra, Nico, and Ramondre so far that were the non-first round picks.
110 is about to be a guy that wasn't even taken in our 4-round draft.
Oh, my Lanta.
He was a supplemental pick.
I love a good supplemental pick. I looked through the supplemental draft and I couldn't find anybody I love, so I'm interested.
That's why I asked you about basing off projection.
Okay, let's hear what we got.
I'm taking Jordan Love.
Okay, so that was the one guy that I was like trying to make an argument for in my head, and I was like, but am I going to put him over Kyle Pitts?
Yes.
Or am I going to say I'm not? I still
That's
believe
the person you're asking me if we're going to put him over, not Trevor Lawrence.
I also was going to put Javonte over him. I still believe in Javonte.
I had Kyle Pitts 13.
Holy shit. Justin, cover your ears, Justin.
I got Josh Palmer ahead of him. How about that?
That I cannot do. I cannot sign off on that. But I like Justin. This is a great argument, though. It's like, because Kyle Pitts is the ultimate projection player. There's never been a better projection player in the NFL than Kyle Pitts. It's all potential, and it hasn't happened yet. I mean, obviously the first year was great, but it's freaking Arthur Smith. So it's like I really like if he stinks again this year, Sean, I can't support it anymore. I can't do it anymore. It's 4 years. I've tried.
I think he's got a real shot to have a good year.
I really do too.
Bet on it. I don't like. I'll be happy to watch it, but I'm not gonna.
It's great. His
eggs in that basket.
His dynasty value, like keep trade cut, like that kind of thing, dude. It is taking a serious tumble this year. I mean, it's
not good.
It's almost borderline like not a first round pick trade worthy. Like it's crazy. Anywho, so yeah, I had Javonte Williams kind of in that my 10 slot, and the reason for that was just I still think there's something there. He hasn't done it yet, and it's just like, okay, but he definitely was a disappointment. Obviously, at 1-4.
Speak it into existence for me, please. Like I'm here for it.
I just loved him so much as a prospect. I'm still hanging on to it. Basically, is what it is. But
yeah, I I definitely like choked the end of this list together. I probably would put Ramondre at 10 over Trevor Lawrence.
I couldn't put Lawrence in. I couldn't do it. He just has not done enough fantasy wise for me to like be sold on it yet. I still think he's gonna have a better year next year, but
I don't necessarily think it's all on him. He's definitely thrown a lot of interceptions.
yeah, he has
Like,
not been. I mean, that first year was awful.
He also threw the most drop passes last year in the NFL. So like
that'll happen when you have Calvin Ridley on your team.
Calvin Ridley, Zay Jones,
Evan Ingrams loves to drop passes as well.
He does. He caught it.
He was much better last year, but he does drop a good number of them. Yeah, I don't know. I would like to see maybe one more year out of Lawrence with maybe a better offensive line too. That would probably help him, but that's never seemed to happen yet. So
yeah, the rest of my list, not really in any particular order, was Palmer, Pitts, Freiermuth, Javonte Williams, and Chuba Hubbard.
Oh wow, I forgot about Chuba. Chuba's value has been all over the place since he's joined the league. He's gone from absolutely nothing.
Easy second rounder, man.
He's a second rounder now for sure. I mean, the rest of that draft class was tough. It was not a lot of good stuff going on there.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
Yeah, the Diami Browns of the world, the Amari Rodgers of the world. It was a tough sled. The quarterbacks too, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, like neither one hit real hard at all. I mean, even Lawrence, for that matter, did not really hit that hard. It's been a weird time for that draft class.
Yeah, Lawrence went 1-7.
Yeah, it was with him 1-7, then Waddle was 1-8, I think. That's crazy. Anywho, we're about at an hour and 17-ish minutes, so we'll wrap this one up for tonight. We had a pretty good discussion. I'm gonna post Sean's free agency picks in the group chat, and we're gonna see how many he gets right. I gotta be honest with you. I think you're gonna get a lot of those right. I think there's a really good chance.
They feel good.
The thing is, it has to. There's not like a ton of ways that the quarterbacks could fall. I feel like it as murky as it is, it still feels right for a few of those guys. Like the Kirk Cousins of the Falcons feels right.
He's going to be the first domino. Like it feels like it's either going to be Minnesota or Atlanta, and
it has to be.
That's literally going to shift everything if he goes one place or the other. So,
I mean, if I'm Minnesota, are you really doing it for Kirk? I would just let him walk. I'd just start fresh because that team's not ready to win. Like defensively, that team's not ready to win.
Why aren't you trading Jefferson then? Like,
I think it's a conversation you'd probably have to have.
So much for him.
That's what. But I think if you lose on the Kirk bargain or sweepstakes, I think you got to consider blowing it up. Like it's got to be.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't. I just don't think they have enough to even be in the talk of like. To me, they're not even remotely in the same weight class as like the Lions. Like it's just not. They're not even there. They're not even.
Lions,
they're not.
Like
they're not beating any of those teams,
yeah.
even with Kirk. So it's like, what's the point? I don't know. So I would, if I were them, I think they still have that young GM too with Kwesi. I forgot his last name, but it feels like it. Like let's move on and then maybe just try to like retool a little bit and see what happens with a different quarterback, perhaps. But yeah, I think there's a good chance a lot of these hit, Sean. I believe in it. All right, so we are going to wrap this one up for tonight. Next podcast, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the rookie draft class. We did a lot of good discussion on it today, but I would like to do a little bit more on that, and then we'll probably talk about free agency review to see maybe how many of those you got right. I think, what's the date that it opens? Is it next Wednesday?
If it's when the league year starts, it's the 15th.
Okay. So because I remember there's that stupid tampering period, which always pisses me off. But that's usually when you end up hearing about shit anyway. So maybe it'll be just after. So we'll do a podcast after free agency because I don't think there's a point to have one before. And then we'll also discuss the rule change voting. So I'm going to put that survey out soon. We'll vote on the rules. We'll talk about that. And then we should be in a great spot for draft content. I do want to say that we have a confirmation from Charlie Campbell. He's going to come back on the podcast. So this year, I think I'm going to do it a little bit differently with how much receiver talent we have this year, where we'll maybe get him to break down the players in a little more depth as opposed to general questions, but maybe throw a couple of those in too. So if you guys have any specific questions you want to ask Charlie, get them in earlier, maybe send them over to me, and then maybe we can see if we can get those in as well. So looking forward to having him on again, and then we will see y'all next time here on the PHU Dynasty podcast. We'll see you later.